One thing that I think isn't talked about enough is the idea that, you're always enough for yourself. And when I say that, I really just mean that I feel like the lives we live are often spent in reference to everything. And I feel like, we feel like we have to attribute so much to ourselves in order to have some kind of value. And I think that's sort of unrealistic. Not in the sense that it doesn't make sense, oh, if I have this, then I attribute that value to me. But in saying that you're separate from that thing, you have to realize that your value has to come from you. Your value has to be within who you are, not within what you possess. And that's what it means to say it's not about what you possess, but how much of yourself is within your possession. All that really to say that, I feel like our expectation for certain things sort of limits us. And, our progression and in our trying to get things to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, I feel like we lose everything that we currently have that should make us feel good about ourselves. I feel like it's always a battle of building on top of what you currently have that people don't really understand, that we don't sort of get, because we feel like we have to break everything down before we truly build something that we can like. But, if you vest yourself at your foundation and you learn to appreciate who you are, because that doesn't take anything but, self love. And I think self love really has no condition. Then that's all you need to do in order to have anything. I feel like our expectation to have anything, our expectation, sort of takes away everything we seek to gain. Because in expecting it or in, sort of needing it as a part of ourselves, you know, sort of makes the implication that what we are is not currently enough. And I think you always are enough for yourself. You just have to give yourself that sort of clarity and that sort of understanding. And it wasn't until I truly realized this that, I found some relative comfort in the present moment. That and being patient with myself, because, I feel like nowadays life is spent, pretty fast. We want to achieve so much so quick, and we forget to sort of appreciate the present moment. So, we sort of create some type of present hell in expectation of a future heaven. And I think we shouldn't do that in the slightest. I think the present moment and its appreciation sort of give your future and give your life its vitality. The intimacy that you give to the present moment and the affection you give to both yourself and your surroundings are the affection you feel. You truly get what you give in a lot of situations. I don't necessarily mean it in exactly the way you give it. You could be nice to one person, but that doesn't mean they have to be nice to you. But sometimes I feel like the very action of niceness or the kindness or the positivity that you project automatically goes back to you. It's about what makes you feel good. And I feel like expectation to get it back makes the implication that you need it in order to sustain that feeling. And I feel like the more we invest in ourselves and the more we affirm who we are as individuals, the greater success we're going to have. Not necessarily because, things are just going to mystically work out in our favor, but to say that, when you stop depending on certain circumstances and certain events and certain expectations to make you feel happy or to make you feel good about who you are, then you're going to start doing whatever makes you feel good. And in doing that, you're going to find your passion and energy and motivation to do whatever it takes. And, even with things that I personally don't feel like doing, like sometimes I got to study and I'm like, I don't feel like doing it. At the end of the day, I feel like in realizing that I'm a part of whatever I'm doing, and I have that appreciation for myself, respect for myself, then that sort of, turns into discipline. Because I'm going to do it, even if it's just to get it out the way, I'm going to do it as presently as possible so it goes as quick as possible. And in that way, I'm freeing myself up for more time for myself. And that's why I feel like sometimes that procrastination and expectation to find some type of positivity within certain situations is sort of misplaced. Because I feel like in our very effort to look for that positivity within the situation implies that we won't be able to see it without looking. I feel like we have to learn to sort of watch life unfold in front of us and watch how we interact with it. And more so, watch the subtle beauty that is life itself. I feel like there's always good and bad that live in reference to each other within the present moment. It's always here. And I feel like it's about the conscious intention and conscious choice that you make to see, that which you are. And I think that's what it means, what I forgot what the quote was. Something alluding to, what you see is what you are, or what you gain is what you are, or something along those lines. Essentially, how you are and what you truly embody within yourself, I feel like is represented in the world. And I don't necessarily mean that in a way to say that, if you are this way, then automatically good things happen. But if you are that way, then you're going to start to see the good in things that you see in yourself. And that's why I feel like it's always a double-edged sword with your consciousness and your perception of yourself. And that's why I feel like it's very important to more so affirm the person, affirm yourself before you walk the path, and not necessarily chase the outcome, but to walk the path. I feel like it all starts with your affirmation of self, because you are the vessel, the vehicle, the whatever, you want to call it, that achieves anything for you. So if anything, you have to give appreciation to yourself for somewhat the very notion of being alive sometimes. And I feel like, at times it can get difficult. And I can't really speak to that to a great extent. But from what I do understand, from what I have captured, I know that, you can't grow out of a place of hate for yourself. I feel like you need to invest that love. And sometimes I feel like telling myself that, self-love has no condition is what allowed me to sort of break down that barrier of, well, this is a certain way, well, that is a certain way. So how can I, just getting rid of that whole entire foundation, that whole framework that, you have to jump through certain hoops in order to love yourself or in order to appreciate who you are. Even if you recognize that you need to grow, you don't have to imply that you're terrible. You don't have to imply that you're bad in order to turn into something that's good. You can start where you are, kind of take that as you will and learn how to invest positivity within yourself and in your situation so you can sort of influence them in your favor. And what I'm realizing is, a lot of people might say something like, well, the world is negative, or there's some negativity in the world. And, it's not going to get solved by your contribution to it. I feel like negative circumstances and you adding negativity to it is only going to make it more negative for you. And that's why I feel like, if anything, the importance should be placed in your positivity and affirmation of whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, it's something you have to experience. And if it's dictating your feelings, it's something you have to feel. And I feel like in recognizing that your feelings are your own, you have to take whatever responsibility you can. And of course, there are situations that are out of your control. Of course, there are things that sort of make us feel a way that we can't really influence. But I feel like when we do have any conscious choice in the matter, it's important to sort of take that choice, because we owe it to ourselves to sort of recognize that we are enough for any situation, because we are enough for ourselves. Your place in the world isn't necessarily dictated by everyone around you, but how you feel about it. And that's why I feel like it's important, because at the end of the day, your comfort isn't dictated by everyone else's comfort, but your comfort with yourself. And you need to recognize that. And of course, there's honesty. There's a truth aspect to it. Of course, you don't want to impede on other people's, well-being. I feel like you have to be more with these kinds of things. But I feel like once you recognize that, then you have to instill the idea that, who you are can only get better as long as you express who you are. If you bring a false version of yourself or ingenuineness to a situation, then, what's going to grow is only the ingenuineness. I feel like we root ourselves deeper in this idea of our ego, this idea of ourselves, the more we don't allow ourselves to be expressed. And that's why I feel like you have to really bring yourself forward and just be yourself and watch things unfold. I feel like being present with yourself and present enough to actually interact with situations allows you to sort of learn from anything and everything. Because in reality, like, everything is now, everything is new, and anything can be everything. And in recognizing that, it's really just to say that, how much you invest in a certain thing or anything can be your everything. It can be how you sort of find your happiness or find your way back to yourself or whatever you need to do. But I think it's just important to recognize that you don't necessarily need to do single specific things in order to be yourself. I feel like you don't need to, practice certain things in order to be healthy, but it's really determined by you and your understanding of yourself and what works best for you. And that's why I feel like it's important to recognize that you are always enough for you. And to live in reference to anything else is sort of not necessarily, I wouldn't say being ingenuine to yourself, but more so not allowing yourself to shine through the cracks of your expression. I feel like sometimes we get so caught up in how we express ourselves that we forget we're supposed to be expressing ourselves. Sometimes we get so caught up in speaking English or speaking our language that we forget we're supposed to speak through it. It's all about how much of yourself you can put into your actions and put into whatever it is you're doing. And I feel like when it comes to your expectation, it sort of strips that away. Because if you're expecting certain things to be a certain way, or if you're already projecting this idea of the future or this ideal way for things to go, then it's already limiting how much you can express yourself and how much of yourself you can put into a situation without being knocked off. Because I feel like when we aren't being present with ourselves and we do come in with a certain intention and not intention, with a certain expectation, then when it sort of gets sets awry, and we're faced with things that we didn't expect, and we're forced to sort of resort to that ego, resort to that, version of ourselves. I feel like is not necessarily rehearsed, but panicked. And I feel like our calmness and patience with life is sort of what contributes to our growing in, the overall experience. Like I had a public speaking thing I had to do the other day. And, before I was doing it, I was like, oh, how should I prep for this? Of course I read through what I had to do, this, that, and the other. But I feel like it wasn't until I realized that, you sort of have to let yourself go to truly benefit from anything. Because I feel like you have to start where you are. And if you I feel like we try to build ourselves so much up in this mental scheme that it almost implies that what we are right now is not currently enough. And I feel like that sort of realization about confidence in your expression is sort of important, because, they always say like confidence is a quiet thing, or it's something like that. And I didn't realize that till I wouldn't even say recently, but it's been a minute, but I really only started implementing it recently. It's about how much you allow yourself to be you, and how much you allow your expression to not necessarily be referenced by everything else around you. I feel like if we're always waiting on other people to judge us, or if we're always basing how we are acting or basing how we're doing certain things on how we think we're going to be perceived, then we're already casting judgment on ourselves. And I feel like it's important to not suffer before it's necessary. And I don't mean that to say, go out there and do anything. Of course, be moral. Of course, be honest with yourself. But understand that, it's your life to live. And we can't necessarily keep on waiting for life to happen. Life is happening everywhere you are, because you are the life. We call this whole thing we do, the whole concept of what we do, what we interact with, life. But we're the one that's living it, because we have the life. The life is something that we possess, not something that we see in the world. And that's why I feel like it's important to be the life and not necessarily try to see it. Because I feel like we lose it in everywhere we try to see it, and not recognizing that it's already within us. So pretty much all that to say, our expectation takes away everything. Our inability to bring ourselves forward and be authentic with ourselves is taking away our freedom. And I feel like it's really just how you express yourself to yourself. Sometimes I get in my head about certain situations, and sometimes I just got to take a deep breath and smile and say, I'm thinking too much. Because if all you can do is think about it, I don't think it's worth thought. I feel like we spend so much time in reference to everything within our mind that we forget we're supposed to be living within the world. We're supposed to occupy space. We're supposed to use the space that we take up. And if we're not doing that, then we can't live up to our potential or what we actually can achieve. And I feel like you're the only one who can achieve whatever you can achieve, because you're the only one that's you. And in saying that, I mean, you're always enough for you. And when it comes to referencing your path, I feel like you have to not necessarily look at how far others are along in their stuff, how, this is that and the other, but, be intent with yourself. If success is something you want to achieve, you have to first achieve it in thought, in who you are. And I feel like the greatest success that anyone can achieve is being themselves. Because that's when you open the doors to actually getting things that you want. So, if you made it this far, thank you for watching, first of all. And I think in our sort of attempt to become better and progress as people, we have to do better at giving ourselves a certain amount of grace and understanding that, it's our first time here. You know, the expectations that we sort of have on ourselves are sometimes unrealistic, but I don't say unrealistic in the sense that, you know, you shouldn't achieve this or you can't, but to say that, you know, life shouldn't be something that we live stressed. I feel like my life's gotten easier because I've given myself a certain amount of grace with certain things and understanding of cause and effect and how much I need to put in for this and how much I need to put in that in order to have a relative sense of success. And I feel like that only comes with your ability to be present with yourself. And I feel like being present with yourself is one of the most intentional things you can do. Because once you're present with yourself, I feel like that's where you instill that appreciation for who you are. Because I feel like we often try to escape from who we are in the present moment, not because, you know, we're scared of who we are in the present moment, but because the idea of who we are is so much of a thought thing that we think when we escape from those thoughts, we will cease to be, but that's not the case. It's important to be right where you are, and I feel like we constantly live in reference to everything else, and that's why we lose track of it. You know, when we come to interact with people, you know, sometimes you feel like, oh, you know, you go to a social function or some event, some this is that and the other, and you know, you feel like you think about it more than you actually experience it. And I feel like when you're truly present, when you're truly experiencing something, or when something is truly fun, it's not thought. You know, when you're riding a roller coaster and you think about how fun it is, you're not on the roller coaster saying, oh man, like this is that and the other. You're within it. You're in the moment. You're present. You're allowing yourself to truly experience what it is that is life. And I feel like that's where our fun is. That's where our joy is. And that's where, you know, your love is always going to be. So, again, if you made it this far, thank you. If you didn't, thank you anyway. I appreciate all of you nonetheless. Keep being y'all. Keep being great. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're treating yourself like a friend. Because at the end of the day, as long as you have yourself, you do have somebody. So, yeah. Oh,